My name is John Naland. I'm the AFSA Retiree Vice President, and I welcome you to AFSA. More important for today, I was the Director of the State Department's Office of Retirement from 2011 to 2015. And when I was there, the department did a lot of outreach efforts to try to educate active duty folks and retirees about their retirement benefits. There are two reasons to do this. First, to help you, because you need to know what your benefits are and to take advantage of them, and also to help those of us either working in the department or now working in AFSA who get contacted saying, help, you know, I'm in trouble, I need to be dug out of this hole. And unfortunately, sometimes in retirement benefits, there are no waivers, there's no way to dig you out of the hole. So it's very important that you know the rules. And as a Foreign Service retiree, I certainly understand that you just left your desk, you know, with hundreds of emails coming in, working on a very important issue, and sometimes you think, well, maybe the HR stuff should be left to other folks, but it's your retirement, and you know, you need to do some due diligence, and the fact that you're here today shows that you're doing that due diligence. So I thank you for that. And you know, it's a gray day and a cold day in Washington just before a potential government shutdown, but this should be a happy crowd, because I can tell you, even though I ticked out and I would have stayed longer, as a retiree, you know, with my pension and the TSP, I'm now free to do some other things. So it should be a happy thing to think about retirement. What I'm going to do today is give you some general guidance for typical cases. And one thing I learned in retirement is that there really are no typical cases. Everyone's unique. So I'll give you some general guidance, and a lot of it is still on the department's website as an official ALDAC department notice. But for your specific case, you obviously need to go to the official guidance. The HR Service Center in Charleston can be reached at their email, hrsc@state.gov. So if you have your specific question, especially if you're going to, you know, decide on a retirement date or anything else based upon it, you definitely reach out for official guidance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these two checklists that I prepared. And if you need to leave early, if you take the checklist, I think this is 95% of what you'll get out of today's session. It's just having this information. So I'm going to go through these checklists because they're kind of bullet points and explain a couple of them. And at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers. So it's obligatory to start with beneficiary designations, because this is something you need to have right the day you join the Foreign Service, halfway through, at the end, and then after you retire. Because every year there are cases where someone dies, an employee, an annuitant, and it turns out that the beneficiary was their mom, because that's who they listed the day they joined the Foreign Service, and it's not their current wife or husband. And the more typical case is that the beneficiary is their first spouse, not their current spouse. So if you've done any changes in your life since you joined and filled out the initial beneficiary designation forms, please look at them again. For active duty folks, most of the beneficiary designations are in your official your EOPF. That's not the case with the Thrift savings plan. You can call the TSP Thrift line, and they'll tell you over the phone who the beneficiary designation is. But if there's any question, just fill out a new form and send it in. But this doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, the cases are tragic that the real next of kin doesn't get the money. So please keep that in mind going forward. If you get married, divorced, have a spouse pass away, you need to update that. Retirement planning seminars. I also work part-time in the Transition Center at the Foreign Service Institute, and I'm not tooting my own horn to say that the FSI has really excellent retirement planning seminars. The student evaluations, you know, for decades have said so. So if you haven't yet taken one of these courses, please find either 1, 2, or 4 days to do so. The mid-career course, the 2-day course that's listed first, is for employees who are at least 10 years away from retirement. The other courses, the RV 101, that's a 4-day course. That's for anyone within 10 years of retirement eligibility. So in the Foreign Service, you know, you're eligible after 20 years. You know, that could be 10 years into your career, even though you may not retire until you have 38 years in the service or something. So if you're at all, have any time at all, and those of you who are stationed here in Washington hopefully can, take one of the FSI courses. Because, you know, they're, you know, the 1 day is 8 hours, and the 2 days are 16 hours, and the 4 days are 32 hours, and, you know, that's a lot of good information that is really helpful. So please do that. And doing that will help you to understand your retirement benefits, because I'm always amazed at how many busy Foreign Service folks really don't understand, you know, what it is they'll get when they retire. So if you're a state, and I realize not everyone is state, at state we have something called EBIS. So on HR Online, there's a thing called EBIS Retirement, and you can go in there and it'll tell you what your annuity and your annuity supplement, you know, benefits are. And obviously, if you are not going to retire for 15 years, everything will go up, you know, because you'll have a higher, you know, grade and things like that, but you can get a ballpark idea. So if you're at state, go into EBIS and look at that and get a, you know, ballpark idea. For Social Security, you can type that information in EBIS, but I'd recommend going directly to the Social Security website, setting up, sign up for an account, My Social Security. Now, has anyone here done that? Okay. So if you haven't done it, be careful, because you're going in to register to look at your Social Security information. They want to make sure it's you and not the North Korean hacker. So they're going to ask you questions which actually come from your credit report. And so, you know, when I did it, it's like, you know, 5 years ago you had a mortgage and it was in this range or this range. Well, don't wing it, okay? Go to your records and make sure you know what the right answer is, because if you answer too many wrong, then they think you're the North Korean hacker, and it gets a lot harder to register for your My Social Security account. But once you register for it, then you're set. You can go in and see what your Social Security benefits are, and when it comes time to retire, you can apply for Social Security benefits. Thrift Savings Plan, of course, their website has all kinds of tools where you can, you know, project how much you're going to end up with, and then take, you know, do projections of how you can take money out. So that's very helpful. And a key retirement benefit is your health benefits plan. So keep that in mind. And the next point, health insurance, and actually the next 2 points, health insurance and the life insurance policy. The key point here is don't cancel any of those in your last 5 years of service, because you have to have it, you know, at retirement, you have to have had it for 5 years. It's very rare. For example, if you go to the Sinai and the observers, and there's an opportunity that you can take some other health insurance, be very careful. You know, so it doesn't apply to many people, but please be careful. And for FEGLI, the life insurance you carry into retirement, you have to have had that same level for at least the last 5 years. So at retirement, you can't all of a sudden say, oh, I want 5 multiples of my salary, and I want this and I want that. You can't do that unless you've been paying for that for at least 5 years. Prior service. For example, I was in the Army for 3 years, and I bought back that service, and that added with my Foreign Service time to give me a higher pension, because part of the calculation is how many years of credible service you have. So if you've had military service, Peace Corps, there's a whole kind of list of federal employment, and there's a couple DC government employments where you can get federal retirement credit. But in most of those cases, you have to proactively buy it back, because when I was in the Army, I didn't pay into Social Security. I didn't pay into the Foreign Service, you know, retirement fund. So you have to proactively buy it back, and it can take some time. So that's something you can do day one. As soon as you're, you know, tenured and you figure you're going to make it to retirement, go ahead and do that. And if you were in the civil service before joining the Foreign Service, obviously that's credible service, but the money you paid is sitting over at Office of Personnel Management. It's not down in Charleston in the Foreign Service Trust Fund with CGFS. So if you were in the civil service before joining the Foreign Service, you need to proactively ask OPM to send that money to state. And that process I've seen take a year. And obviously, I mean, vice versa is the case. If you're in the Foreign Service now and decide, hey, I want to go into the civil service, then you have to ask state to send OPM that money. So that's something you can do right now if it applies and get it done. And kind of sometimes the last step in a lot of these things is the most critical step. So, you know, you buy back your military time. You need to make sure that in your EOPF, you have a paid in full memo to make sure that it really went all the way through the system and was fully credited. And if that's not the case, then you can email hrsc@state.gov or pay help at state.gov and get them to track it down. But it's important to do that because sometimes that last kind of step doesn't make it through. Divorce. The Foreign Service has unique laws regarding to spousal benefits in divorce. It's something the Civil Service doesn't have, and most of the divorce attorneys in Washington have no idea of it, and none of the divorce attorneys outside of Washington have any idea of it. So if you're in Foreign Service and you get divorced, you need to pay attention to that. There's an ALDAC that I wrote that I referenced here, and of course, you know, it's an ALDAC that was cleared by L and everyone that drills down into that. And kind of the key takeaway on this is that so there's a divorce, and both sides agree that, hey, you know, you keep your benefits and you keep your benefits. Well, for the Foreign Service, that's not good enough. A federal judge has ruled that any waiver by a spouse of their Foreign Service, you know, benefits has to be express. And so that means that in divorce paperwork, it has to say, you know, I waive my, you know, survivor and annuity benefits under the Foreign Service pension plan or Foreign Service retirement system. If it doesn't say that, a federal judge decades ago said it's not good enough. So it's counterintuitive, and if you want to be the test case that gets a new judge to say something different, go ahead. But for now, if you're already divorced, you need to look at divorce decree. If the other spouse waived their benefits, it needs to, you know, really drill down and say, I waive benefits under the Foreign Service retirement plan. Retirement eligibility. Throughout your career, you've seen your SF50, and it has your service computation date. If you look at it, I think it says leave service computation date. So when you join the government, they'll give you leave credit for, they won't give it for the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, but kind of almost any federal employment you've had, you'll get credit in terms of your leave accrual, you know, whether you have 4, 6, or 8 hours of leave or whatever. But to get retirement credit, you have to have, you know, paid into the trust fund or bought back that time. So the service computation date that you've always seen on your SF50 may not be your real service computation date if you've been at other agencies, if you have military time, if you have Peace Corps time, VISTA, things like that. So you need to make sure that all of that other, you know, if you do have other service, that it's all in there in your EOPF, you know, the time you were at Justice or the Peace Corps time you bought back or the military time or whatever, and make sure it's in there. And especially do that if you're one of these folks who want to retire on the day that they're first eligible, okay? Because that's just a recipe for disaster if you've been in more than one agency. So make sure that really that you drill down and get that correct. TSP, this is an interesting week to talk about the Thrift Savings Plan, given that the C Fund dropped 6% last Friday and this past Monday. But the bottom line here is that you need to think, how long will you be drawing from your TSP? You know, depending on your age, you or a spouse, you know, the last one standing, may be drawing from the TSP 30, 40, or maybe 50 years from now. So if you put all your money in the G fund, 30, 40, 50 years from now, that's you know, $120 pair of shoes are going to be $500. You know, so you know, you need to think about the long-term aspects here, and of course that means thinking about investing in stocks. And of course, it depends on your own risk tolerance. If last Friday and Monday, you know, gave you a stomach ache, then you know, then maybe, you know, the stock market is not for you. But the last huge drop in 2008, the C fund dropped 37%. Since then, it's up 250%. And so that's the, you know, the investing for the long term, you know, pitch here. You know, if this money you're going to be drawing 20, 30, 40 years from now, the advice of most financial advisors is think about the long term, and that means trying to beat inflation by having stocks in there to outpace inflation. But again, it's up to your specific situation, your risk tolerance, and if the, you know, looking at the stock market drives you crazy, then maybe it's not for you. But keep it in mind the what inflation does over time to the purchasing power of money. Long-term care insurance, I have it, but it's a personal choice. It's like your house insurance. If your house never burns down, have you wasted that money? I don't think so. But with long-term care insurance, some people say, well, you know, that's a whole lot of money to pay that I may never need. So, but it's you know, it's a personal decision. Take a look at it. And again, FSI retirement planning seminars have good information on it, but at least think about it. Social Security, the easy way to know when you should start taking Social Security, all you need to know is how long you're going to live, and then you can calculate out, you know, the best time to start taking Social Security. And unfortunately, unless you're on death row, you don't know how long you're going to live. So there are all kinds of pros and cons. You know, do you start at age 62 or around then and take a lower amount for more time, or do you wait, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 years and get a higher amount? So you really need to drill down into that, and especially if you have a spouse who, you know, will then, if you pass away first, will then get a survivor benefit. So it's not just, you know, how much money will you get, but what will the value of the survivor benefit be. So again, that's something you need to drill down in. Medicare Part B, that's something you have to worry about at age 65. But when you get to 65, it's really complicated because Medicare Part B, yes, everyone should get it because you know, you're almost fully covered for insurance and it's a great thing. But then it costs a whole lot of money. And so when you get closer to being 65, you need to start thinking about that. And again, some people agonize over it, and some people decide, yeah, and other people say, no, that's crazy. But you need to look at it. And on the AFSA website, there's Paula Jacob she's the CEO of the Foreign Service Benefit Plan, and she goes to FSI, you know, 9 times a year to give this presentation on FEHB and Medicare. And she came here a couple years ago, and it was recorded. And she's really, to my mind, the expert. So you can watch that, and actually you watch it, and you see just how complicated it is to make the decision. Survivor benefits. You need to understand the options if you have, you know, a spouse. Now, if you have a spouse who's also foreign service or civil service, and you both have your government pension, then maybe, you know, you don't elect to leave a survivor benefit because your spouse already has, you know, their SES pension or something. But short of that, you need to really think twice before not leaving a survivor benefit, because if you don't leave a survivor benefit, if you go first, then your survivor not only will not get a benefit, they can't have federal FEHB anymore, health benefit anymore. So again, think carefully about that. FEGLI life insurance. Now, I'm one of these people, I'm so busy, I got FEGLI the day I started and I've kept it and it's fine with me. Other people say that private companies have other deals. If that's the case, go for it. but I'm one of these, FEGLI sounds good, and so I have FEGLI. But at retirement, you need to make decisions about how much coverage you want to carry into retirement. And when you go to the retirement planning seminar, you'll see a very, very busy chart because, you have your base insurance benefit, and then you can have multiples, and you can have this and that and the other, and there are all kinds of options. But at retirement and after retirement, the price of a lot of those will go up. So you have to make a decision. And the Cliff Notes answer is that most people who, when they get to 65, the mortgage is paid off, if any kids they have are off the payroll, most people go to they take the deal where you take your FEGLI insured amount, which is basically your final salary, plus $2,000. And at age 65, over about 36 months, it drops 75%, but then it's free. And that's what most people do because, at age 69 or 68 or whatever it is, they figure, I don't have a mortgage, I don't have, not paying college tuition, and I don't want to pay for my health and my FEGLI, and I just want to take the 25%. And depending on, what you retire at, that could be $40,000 or whatever. So, but if you do want to leave a bunch of money for survivors, if you do have a mortgage, if your kids are still in college or any other reason, then yeah, sure, there are other options, but they cost, and that's the deal. You can keep the higher coverage, but it's going to cost you. And for some of them, it costs more as you get older. So just keep that in mind. You have to weigh the costs and the benefits. But just for the Cliff Notes version, most people go with it's free after 65 if I take the 75% reduction. AFSA, in A100s and specialist orientation classes, 80 to 90 and sometimes 100% of the folks join AFSA. But at retirement, a lot of people say, well, I'm moving to San Francisco or whatever, and I don't see the benefit of being an AFSA member. Obviously, I'm biased here. There is a huge benefit of AFSA membership in retirement. During your career, you have labor management office over there. If you need advice on an ER or file a grievance or anything else, they're there to help. But in retirement, we also have a retirement counselor who's there to help you if you hit a roadblock, with HR or OPM or whatever. And also, AFSA under President Barbara Stevenson puts out a lot of information about what AFSA is doing up on the Hill for the Foreign Service, defend the Foreign Service and to fight for funding for diplomacy and development. But we're also doing stuff behind the scenes to protect our retirement benefits. AFSA is a member of something called the Fed Postal Commission, which is basically all of the civil service unions, plus NARFE, which is a group of retired federal employees. And it represents like 5.6 million federal retirees and annuitants. And AFSA with them, we sent a letter this week to McConnell, Pelosi, Ryan, Schumer, saying, in this budget deal that's, you're working on today, please don't make any additional cuts to federal retirement benefits. So we'll see how that pans out. But AFSA in retirement is still there, fighting the good fight for our retirement benefits. So that's this first checklist, and this is the kind of things you should do 5 years out, 10 years out. And then I put together this other list, retirement planning 1 year out. And both of these lists are on the AFSA website under the retirement section, and so are most of the references I cite. So, if you're at USAID and I'm citing some state ALDAC, maybe that's not too helpful, but we put those on the AFSA website. So once you're within 1 year of retirement, there's some things you really need to think about to get the most out of it. And one is your annual leave. Whatever you have on the books on the last day, before when you retire, in terms of annual leave, that'll be paid out to you in a lump sum. So however you accrue that, whether it's, it's put back because I forget the term, whatever it is, it's regular annual leave you accrued, and then you got some put back because you were in Iraq or something, whatever the number is, you'll be paid for that. And depending on your pay level, that's $20, $30, $40,000 you'll get in a lump sum. So that's nothing to sneeze at. So in your last year or so retirement, it's to your benefit not to take annual leave before you retire. Now, finance says that they'll pay it out to you 12 or 14 weeks after you retire. That's because they want to make sure you don't have an outstanding travel voucher or whatever. The truth is they typically pay it quicker, which is good. And what they don't do is they won't hold it. So if you're retiring September 30th and you say, well, I want this money in the next tax year, they don't do that, so don't even ask. But so the advice is to save your annual leave in your last year of service so you can get that cash value. And of course, it'll have all the deductions for, tax withholding and Social Security and Medicare and things like that, but it's still a nice, lump of money when you leave. Sick leave, you don't get paid for that, but it does get added to your retirement credit. So I think many of us, have a year or more of sick leave, if you've been lucky and health-wise, like I was, a year or more of sick leave accrued at retirement. That's another year added to your retirement credit, which bumps up your foreign service annuity 1% or more, which is a good thing. So not that foreign service folks abuse sick leave, but you definitely don't want to do it towards the end of your career because you want that added in to your retirement credit. Tsp contributions, if you're financially able throughout your career, you want to maximize those contributions, but especially in your last year, because that's the last year you can contribute to TSP, from your federal salary. So even if you retire in March, you can still hit the $18,500 annual limit if you put in all that money, in January, February, March. So, I mean, that's, but it's legally possible. So if you can do it, front load the contributions to do that. Flexible spending account, we retirees do not get it. So in your last year of service, if you need to get those new glasses or contact lenses or whatever the flexible spending account pays for, it's to your benefit to take full advantage of that because it goes away at retirement. Your EOPF, and some people don't realize this, but when you leave the government, you can't log on to your EOPF anymore. So if there's anything in there that you think you might want, all of your EERs or whatever, you need to download those, before you retire. Otherwise, I think you literally have to file a FOIA request. And as we know, that office is a little busy. Networking. The biggest shock when you retire, besides, I have an active duty badge because I work at FSI, but I also have a retiree badge. Well, the retiree badge, I can't get an FSI with it. So the biggest shock is that you lose a lot of billing access. But the other shock is that you don't have the global address list. You don't have the intranet phone book. And so if you want to reach out to a colleague, you have to have saved that information before you retire. So keep that in mind. Reemployed annuitant program used to be called WAE, but we have to rename things every 10 years or so. But it's now the Reemployed Annuitant Program. Our Secretary of State has pretty much put that on hold, but there shall be a future, and a future secretary could unfreeze it. So keep it in mind. But it's just like during our foreign service careers, unless you're, at least in my case, I had to lobby for jobs. I just didn't say, hey, I'm available to be the principal officer or whatever. You have to lobby for jobs, and it's the same with reemployed annuitants. So if you're getting near retirement, you want to start networking with, it's typically going to be the functional or regional bureaus that you've been hanging out in the last couple tours, and saying what opportunities do you have, and of course jobs go to those who are well and favorably known by the people making the hiring decisions. So as you're getting close to retirement, keep that in mind. When you actually get to the retirement, I'm filling out the form online, you need to understand the options you have. And as I mentioned, FEGLI, there's quite a few options. Survivor benefits are options, so you need to understand that. If you have your mind made on that, then filling out the retirement application, at least at state, can take 20 minutes. But you need to have made those decisions. And then when to start withdrawing from TSP, obviously you need to think about that. Out processing, one of the things I did at the Office of Retirement is I created a State Department out processing checklist, which is still on the HR website, and it's actually been updated by my successors. So look at that, because, what do you do with your DIP passport? How do you submit your last, if you have to file one of these wonderful financial disclosure forms, how do you do that? How do you do a travel voucher, if your last travel was, from state, traveling to your retirement destination in San Francisco? How do you do that? So that's all in there. You need to keep that in mind. If you have the Metro transit thing, you need to shut that off, other things like that. Retiree ID, if you're going to be hanging out in Washington and having any occasion to go to Main State or Columbia Plaza, you should apply for a State Department retiree ID. I'm with a group of retired Foreign Service folks who have lunch at Fort Myer at the Officers Club 5 times a year, and the State Department retiree badge gets us into Fort Myer. It doesn't get you into FSI, but it gets you into Fort Myer. So anyway, so it can be a benefit. Retirement, when you do retire, your retirement counselor should send you a copy of your retirement packet, and you definitely want to keep your retirement SF50. It's like the military DD 214. You want to have that as the proof that how long you served and you retired. And consider applying, if you're at state, for the Career Achievement Award. You have to you have to apply for it. It's not automatic. Consider that. And an AFSA membership, you may have been an AFSA member for 20, 30, 40 years as a dues paying, dues were coming out of your federal salary. But at retirement, that stops because the salary system is separate from the annuity system. So if you want to continue to be an AFSA member at retirement, you have to fill out a form and submit it. So keep that in mind. When you do retire, I hope you're familiar with Employee Express. I hope you use it. When you retire, you get access to something called Annuitant Express. And if you're a reemployed annuitant, you get them both, and it's on the same screen. But please do register for Annuitant Express. When I retired 2 years ago, OPM, which is infamous for not doing things on time, very quickly sent me my log on, for Annuitant Express. And you can go in there just like you can go in Employee Express, and you can do things and you can update things. When I was in the Office of Retirement, a retiree living in France emailed me in a huff saying, I need a copy of my last W-2, or I need a copy of my 1099 for my retirement, and I need it now, and if you don't give it to me, I'm going to write to my senator. And it's like, well, who's the senator for France? But also, no, you can get it 24/7 anywhere in the world if you just sign up for Annuitant Express. So the Office of Retirement puts out an Annuitant newsletter. When I was in for decades, they mailed it out to all Foreign Service annuitants. When I was there, my staff said, we can save $20,000 if we don't mail it out anymore, if we just, put it online. And I said, that's a great idea. You do that after I leave. So I did leave, and they did do that. So now it is online, and every year the Office of Retirement sends out a postcard saying, hey, the new newsletter is online. But when you retire, you need to look at that because it has very useful information. and it's on the internet site that I put down here on this sheet. Annuity supplement. If you're foreign service and you retire and you're under age 62, you'll be paid an annuity supplement, which is basically the bridge to get you to Social Security, because we pay into Social Security, which we can't get till 62, but the State Department, Foreign Service lets us retire at 58 or something. So the annuity supplement is a bridge, which equates kind of what Social Security would pay you if they were able to pay you before 62. So, but it's means tested, just like Social Security benefits. So you need to send the Office of Retirement, actually the HR Service Center in Charleston, a form kind of the first week in January, the second week in January, saying what your earnings were. And if you don't do that, they will get your attention by cutting off your annuity supplement. And then come February, everyone kind of snaps to and fills out the form, but keep that in mind. Those are the two checklists. Let me just mention the State Department buyouts. I don't know if they're ever going to be, go forward. The United States Congress is telling state not to do it. And so, but if they do go forward, it's really not a very great deal. I mean, $25,000 after taxes and Medicare and FICA or whatever kind of goes down to $16,000. And so think about how many months you'd have to work to make $16,000. If you're, higher ranks, not too many months. So if there is a buyout and if you're ready to go for it. But if you're not ready to go, then just working a few more months, you make that much, and you get to put into TSP, and you get to use the flexible spending account and other things like that. So that's just my advertisement on that. So those, I've gone through the checklist. I hope you find them useful. And again, the checklists are on the AFSA website, and most of the references are on there too. So we're going to be taking questions. If anyone has a question, they can go up to the back. We are taping this to put this on the AFSA website, so be aware that you'll be taped. And then when it comes time to go, there is a copy of the Foreign Service Journal on the back table, which focuses on life after retirement. So anyone has a question, so that anyone watching the webinar the video can hear it, go to the back thing. And if there are no questions, I'll gladly talk to people individually afterward. So any questions? So remember, retirement can be a happy thing, and it gives you freedom and time to do other things that you don't have time to do right now. So thank you for coming. I hope you found this helpful.